back to the Unpatched Gaming Podcast. I'm your host, Tyler.
And I am Zach.
You are correct.
Yay.
We're here to continue our horror series with one that we've both been very excited for. Maybe myself a little more than Zach. And that's Bloober Team's newest outing with The Medium. That was very loud. I apologize. Nice. With The Medium. We were supposed to play another game as well, or at least talk about another game, but we've decided to not really talk about Yomawari. I will say one thing about it real quick. I think this is a great horror game for children. I would share this with my children.
Yeah, I think so. That's a really good point.
I was exposed to horror really early.
That you thought of it and I didn't.
Okay. Well, I'm glad you agree. I think it's a great horror game for kids. It's not really struggling with any, or it doesn't really deal in any suggestive themes. It is about a small child in the dark, alone at night. It's good for what it is. Check it out. Maybe. Goodness, I will stop doing that. It gave me vibes like I talked about last week with Faith, the one you played last week.
The scares are so sudden. Everything is very sudden when it happens. And it's not like sudden, like, build up to a jump scare. It's very unceremonious. It's a lot like Faith in that regard as well. It just happens. Oh, there it is. It's like, whoa, wait, what? You realize what happened after it was done. I remember one of the guys who chases you down the street getting me. He just showed up on screen. Less than half a second later, I was dead. And I was like, oh, wow, okay. Yeah. It was just very immediate.
And neither of us finished it either, so it does get a little more difficult, a little more involved than the points where we stopped, but neither of us had a ton of time this week. I only finished The Medium, like an hour ago. But enough about that. We are also here to talk about beer, and we have, this is really hard to read. This is from Three Nations. This is the Cozy Bavarian. One of our 2 Oktoberfests this month.
Never met a Bavarian that wasn't cozy. You know what I'm saying?
I don't know what you're saying at all. But we are definitely going to dive in to a few seasonal. Goodness gracious. That splashed everywhere.
It did.
Anyhow, definitely going to be diving into a few seasonal beers this month. We've got another Oktoberfest, and of course, gotta have a pumpkin ale. In this case, a pumpkin stout. Very excited for that one.
Pumpkin.
All right.
Pumpkin.
Oktoberfest. I'm really glad to be back into Oktoberfest. We talked last year, like neither of us had an Oktoberfest in quite a few years.
Yeah, I actually just had Wrench Brewings, which this smells a lot like Wrench Brewings because it's very banana-y on the nose.
It is pretty banana-y on the tongue as well. Yeah,
that's not the kind of Oktoberfest I usually think of, like Live Oak's Oktoberfest, a thinner one, a lighter one.
Definitely.
But this reminds me more of like a
down stout almost.
Yeah, this reminds me more of a Bock. Like if you were just hand it to me, I would guess Bock. But like,
speaking of, I've got a Bock in the fridge. This is like the 5th one I've had this week from Martin House. Martin House's Bock is really, really good. Katie and I have been drinking.
I don't think I've had that one from them.
Yeah. I like Bocks. I like malty beers. I don't have them very often. They are definitely lower on the like craft totem pole. So I don't drink them very often, but I really enjoy them. Even something as simple as Ziegenbock.
Yeah.
I really like Ziegenbock. It's kind of legendary, That's their tagline.
Thank you.
Kind of legendary.
Thank you for that.
Anyhow.
The boyish grin while he said that will only be caught by our YouTube viewers. But he was very pleased with himself, I would have you know. I wish that you guys could just hang out with Tyler for 3 hours. It would explain so much.
I'm also pretty happy with this beer. It's not what I was expecting.
Yeah, not at all.
But I'm happy with the malty banana.
I'm happy it was $2.
Yeah.
That's pretty great.
I thought you meant like I wouldn't want to pay any more than that.
No.
Which I probably wouldn't, actually. But yeah, dude, go to H-E-B.
Okay.
Got a great selection.
I do like going
there. If you
there.
see that Martin House Bock, It's got I think the skeleton of a horse or a donkey on it. It's really good, man. I think you'll like that one a lot.
Yeah.
But something else you liked a lot, or anyway, that segue was garbage.
Yeah, let's
really
just
bad.
start
We're gonna talk about video games
Let's
now.
just start over.
Yeah, we'll just start the
this
entire
beer is so
episode
good.
over.
Thanks for sharing it with me, Tyler. You know what also is just really good and malty? The Medium. Just so rich.
Correct.
And
I love the banana notes
Yeah.
of the Medium. Anyhow, we're going to talk about games now. We're going to talk about Game Now. Go ahead and take it away, Zach.
Yeah,
Tell me about the Medium.
I was not as much looking forward to this. I also loved Observer. You can watch last year's October. I believe it's our second episode. And we played Observer. And Tyler loved it even more than I did, but we both really liked Observer quite a bit, which made me excited to kind of dig into more of Bloober Team's games. I'd kind of written them off as just another one of those horror studios.
Well, we both kind of did. You did with Observer and the Blair Witch, but you were really interested in Layers of Fear.
That's true, I was.
Where I was not interested in Layers of Fear or Blair Witch at all. Just Observer. But after playing Observer, seeing a little more about both of those other games and now the Medium, I think they're one of the top tier horror developers.
I would agree. After playing two of their games, I could say that these guys are worth checking out, and I'm excited to see.
And they're trying
more.
to do something different. We'll see about Blair Witch. We're probably going to play that next year, but they seem to be trying something different, with each of their entries, just sort of exploring their talent. And we'll talk about that with the Medium. It doesn't always work out, but it's always interesting, I think.
Yeah, always worth your time, I'd say, so far with these two. So let me just preface, because this is a brand new game, came out 2021. Both of us played it on PS5. Please know that this is a narrative-heavy game. If you're interested after the first little part of our conversation, which I like to call gentle spoilers, the things for people like me who don't even want to know gameplay or anything about it, how it starts, don't listen to any of the podcast. Don't know why I clicked on it. But then I will mark in the description and everywhere else hard spoilers. This is where we are talking the end of the game, narrative, things that are more, reveal-y. That's a terrible word. Things that are more, I don't know, whatever. More revelations. There we go. Kind of the more significant revelations. That's a smart way of saying that. Good job, Zach.
You did it, bud.
Yeah. So I'll say it. Okay, we are talking now about spoilers.
And there will be some spoilers in the beginning when we talk about sort of the setup of the game and we try to sell the game to you just from the beginning. And I think that's a pretty safe assumption with any new release. The non-spoiler talk, the light spoilers, will include some things that you would likely see in a demo or just from early gameplay stuff that you might see at E3 or whatever. Some light spoilers in the beginning along with the gameplay and the setup.
Yes, so keep that in mind moving forward. Let's get started. So I, just to spoil, quote-unquote, my own feelings of the game, I really, really, really liked the Medium. I actually liked it more than Observer, but not for the reasons I usually like a game, which is very odd, and we can talk more about the way that I play video games. But I do want to mention this game is not going to be for everyone. We've talked about Skill Up, you mentioned, has a very good take on the kinds of people this might be more for. It's not for everybody. It has some glaring issues, but...
And it does not... I only just thought of this. This is a prime example of pretty poor marketing that probably wasn't their fault, or maybe it was, I don't know. But if you look at the marketing around, or if you remember the marketing around Crimson Peak, that sold itself as something entirely different than it was.
That movie.
That
which
is
is
the
a
case
great
here.
Movie.
This is a very different game than it sells itself to be, even that it sets itself up to be in the beginning. It sets some very clear expectations based on really anybody's history with video games.
Yeah.
It is not that.
If you've played any of the big horror titles in gaming history, you will probably be picking up on these notes.
Yeah, and it's not that.
But let's, before we get too far ahead of ourselves, I do want to say I really, really liked this game. And the reason is they have made something wholly original in this world, this space, this story. There's, from what I've seen from their other titles, they're definitely pulling from some very strongly previously established genres or archetypes. And this one, from the most that I can tell, is incredibly their own. Something I have not seen other places. That alone should be applauded. I'm very impressed with that. But let me just kind of paint a picture of the opening. I think it sells the idea of what experience is going to be really well. So you are playing, after a kind of brief little in media res moment and the narrative framing device, you are put into the shoes of your main character, Marianne. And Marianne is a medium, which means she can... she's basically able to see both what we see every day and another world. It's very unclear through the whole game. It's definitely not the final resting place of the dead. It seems to be this kind of in-between place. But a spirit world, for lack of a better...
Some sort of limbo.
Yeah, a spirit world is how they frame it. But limbo, I think, is very, very... very, very smart way of framing it because of what she does in it. She feels that her primary goal is to help people move on from this place after they've died. And at this time in the story, her adoptive father, Jack, has passed away, and she is looking for his favorite tie clip. His favorite tie clip. She knows where his tie is. She's looking for his favorite tie clip, which immediately, you're doing something very mundane right out the gate, looking for this tie clip. And it takes a little bit, especially if you're paying attention to all the rooms. This is the room house she grew up in, and it's built, symbolism's a little heavy here, literally on top of a funeral home, the holding space before you go to your final resting place. It's a little heavy-handed, but brilliant, because she grew up on top of this place, and she found her role as a medium on top of this place. Great storytelling. Really good job. But she's looking for this, and the first question that I felt as someone playing this game, and maybe others feel differently, but I was immediately, why do we care? Because I'm looking for this tie clip for a while, because I'm going to every other room, I develop a photo. Like, why do we care about what these dead people are wearing? Like, is it for us, or is it for them? Like, it goes all the way back to ancient Egyptians, you know? Putting everything in their tomb that they're going to take with them to the afterlife. Like, these are old ideas, and is it for us, our comfort, to remember them as they were at their best?
Yeah, I think for us today, it is for us.
Yeah, but I mean...
Because we do, open casket viewings and things,
yeah,
and you
sure.
don't just want to see some shriveled naked body.
Sure, no, I get that, but...
You put on Sunday best.
I feel like that's the minority of history.
Yeah.
I think up until this point, there is this very tangible, there is something happening when I am putting them in their favorite thing, their favorite tie clip. And for Marianne, that's how it is. Because when she sees her adoptive father, she calls him Jack. When she sees Jack again, he is on the other side. And he feels as though he has things that he still needs to take care of. He's like, Marianne, I'm sorry, I'm so busy. And he's at his desk, of course. So the place that she meets him, she goes in the real world to his desk. There's a vase that gets knocked over mysteriously, and it's because of the force of him needing to finish what he's doing at his job. Kind of, all the spirits are portrayed so well in this space of confusion, like partial lucidity, sometimes fully lucid to what's going on, sometimes not. Very mysterious, and to see, we talked about how, and many will, how Marianne's a pretty bland protagonist, but one of the things I really like about her is how she handles people like that.
Yeah,
it's never condescending. It's never let me try to pull them back to reality. It's meeting them where they are, but also being willing to be clear and firm about what is and needs to happen.
You know what I like in her demeanor too? Rasputin from Psychonauts, specifically Psychonauts 2. Just how gentle and understanding this person is. I see a lot of that, the similar character traits in both of them, and I think it's a more... I'll just jump straight to the point rather than try to illustrate it a little more. This is a more modern sensibility, I think. If this game came out 10 years ago, I think the other major character, he's in the trailers. What's his name again? Thomas? Yeah. Thomas likely would have been the protagonist if this game came out 10 years ago, looking for his, counterpart, I'll say, rather than the other way around.
Sure.
Not just because, seeing more female protagonists is nice, but just because of the demeanor and like what writing in video games typically was. I do think it's a more modern sensibility.
I was going to bring that up,
and if we did have a sequel to Psychonauts, in the amount of time sequels typically come out, rather than 20 years later, I think it would have been the same. We would not have seen the Rasputin we saw in Psychonauts 2, a gentle, understanding, kind soul. But I appreciate that. I really do.
Yeah.
And it comes across very well. I also agree with you. I really appreciated that, even though I thought she was a little bland otherwise.
Yeah, and I think it's I don't know, but you're right. And I was going to mention this when we got to that part later in the game, which we will. We'll put it after the spoilers mark probably. But basically a lot of the stuff around Thomas, who's your far more typical male protagonist, I definitely agree with you. Basically, I don't want to go too far, but I definitely agree with you. And just to wrap that opening section up, she ferries her adoptive father on. She calms him down. She's not just saying, yeah, I got a lot of work to do. She's not fully pandering to his this kind of confusion. But she does meet him there and is gentle, but says, I think you need to lie down. You've been working really hard. Something along those lines. And how hard it is for her.
Yeah.
It's this really beautiful opening moment.
It's good. It's really good, man.
And it lays the foundation for who she is, what her role is, and then most importantly, I'd say, draws you into the kind of person she is and the way that she is a medium. And because I think what made me stick with this game, a game that I usually would write off pretty quick, for all of my usual sensibilities around video games, what intrigued me so much was the role of medium, was this idea of a medium that Bloober Team created, and letting you, the player, inhabit that role was what was so interesting to me. Even though there many times the gameplay had nothing to do with me actually utilizing that role, it was the narrative space that it put me in that I was really engaged with. And this opening, saying goodbye to her father, not only on our side, preparing the body for burial, but on her side, preparing his spirit to depart. It's so beautiful, and I love it.
It's good, and
I'd argue, unfortunately, definitely the strongest part of the game.
Oh, really?
I would say
the opening.
Barring
really
some sections we'll get to, which could take that spot for me personally, because it is such a narrative space and how well it sets out the rules of the world that it will play with, and I really like that it does that. But it hits every note exactly right.
I would agree. I haven't had too much time to stew on that, like what's the best scene, because again, I only finished it just before recording. First of all, I'll agree with you. I think that's probably the best. Also, because Bloober Team is just so good at what they do in rendering worlds. Their games are beautiful. And this is no exception. In fact, I'll disagree with Skill Up in saying that the real world is pretty boring.
Oh, what? I thought it was better than the spirit world.
So did I.
Like
I want to be there way more.
Something tells me Skill Up needs to watch more Russian cinema, like that Eastern Slavic.
Yeah.
Like I think talking about Paratopic, one of my favorite guys, Ragnarok's, love him. He talked about how Paratopic felt like the Zone from Stalker. Mm-hmm. And I get those vibes from this, that dilapidated Eastern European architecture.
Yeah.
It's so good. Even
I
the forest.
With him completely. Yeah, the way the forest is rendered, or the maze, the hedge maze, or... And he says the entire the inn that you're in, or the resort rather,
Neva,
is boring.
Oh no!
No, I completely disagree. For that reason, that Russian or Eastern European.
It's very like, because the spirit world has a singular palette. for most of like
Most of
yeah,
it, yeah.
and those are very intentional moments when it's not. It pretty much has a singular color palette. So does the physical world, I'll say.
Yeah.
Because both are very real, right, in this game. But the physical world, even though it is a lot of grays and blacks, like
Green.
and I was about to say, I think what it does it for me is that like just like kind of, and it's not you would know it better than I would. You're the video guy, but the desaturated green. Is that the right word for it? Like where it's not like really bright or vibrant. Like it is a dark green. And
It's very dark.
It doesn't pop.
It blends in with the grays.
Yeah.
But it is just enough of a contrast to stand out.
It's gorgeous, man. I love it.
And I don't mean it doesn't pop, but it draws you in very particular directions and adds to every single scene. I definitely prefer the real world, for lack of a more appropriate term, the real world.
Yeah, physical.
Physical, yeah, that's correct. As opposed to the spirit world, for more than one reason, but that's a big reason.
That's a huge reason.
We'll talk about the other reason later.
Yeah, and we can get to that. Let's kind of move through because I think most of the best discussion is going to come from spoilers here.
Well, I wanna talk just a little more about the expectations I think you should set. If you don't know much about this game, any trailer is going to show it to be much more than it actually is, and the opening gameplay is somber. You expect the actual gameplay that you're getting to be a little slower. It's a bit of a tutorial. That's all great, but it is pretty unashamedly a Resident Evil game. That's what it looks like it's going to be. And I don't mean it's not setting up the idea that there might be a bunch of monsters you're going to shoot. You're not going to need to scramble for ammo. I wasn't really expecting that, but I was expecting some puzzle solving, which there's really only 2 sections that involve any meaningful thought at all. And maybe even 1, actually. The other one is very light. But it sells itself with the trailer, any trailers, and the beginning of the game to be some sort of narrative puzzle game that involves the sort of moment-to-moment gameplay, the downtime that you would see in Resident Evil 1 or 2.
Think like adventure game almost rules, finding large open spaces, finding items to progress, having to solve these puzzles to get new items, or using the item to solve a puzzle.
It's not really that.
Not at all.
It looks like that, and the sort of game space that the narrative exists in is that, but the gameplay is actually incredibly boring.
It's very much more like if you took the camera and third-person perspective of those games and just did Observer, but then we'll talk about
or even a walking sim.
Yeah,
like the way you're correct when you say that the way the story is revealed is very similar in both games, Observer and The Medium,
and even like how you progress through the world in many ways, barring some of the extra stuff they try to do. If you strip a lot of that away. Really, at its heart, it progresses like... I think that's the word I was looking for last time. It progresses like Observer does.
But I think it's even more like... though I've not played this game. I've only seen a couple videos on it, people talking about it. But I think the story is revealed in a similar way to Everybody's Gone to the Rapture. Observer is much more involved, in my opinion, whereas so much, especially in the later half of this game, it involves you turning an object to line up some pieces, and then there's some dialogue that happens, some exposition.
Sure, but I mean, Observer, you really are just moving from space to space at the end of the day.
But there's much more happening, whereas it's used over and over and over again, these white shapes, the like ashes that are floating in the air, and you sort of align them.
Oh yeah, like that's what I mean. Like there's more layered on top of this that is pretty much arbitrary, because when you strip that away, it really is Observer in third person with the fixed camera.
I get that.
Yeah.
I understand that
That's what I'm
the
getting
progression
at, I
of the
guess.
game is, but the way the story is told to you is much less involved than Observer. Yeah, you're doing that. You're just moving a few objects, turning some parts of the world maybe, but it's the visual and auditory, I think, brilliance of Observer that is missing here. It's much more subtle, which is fine. I grew to like the game.
This is
I did
the
grow to like
story
the game.
here is told far more in and don't think like when I say notes and stuff like this needless stuff. It's very brief notes found in very, very obvious places. A lot of environmental storytelling, but I was able to put together what was happening halfway through the game. Like it's if you're paying attention, and you've played games like this before, many of the pieces will fall into place. Now there are twists and things that caught me off guard. And my final prediction for what was going on wasn't quite right, but I got close. Like there's enough there to really do it, even on its first playthrough. It's not like Dark Souls where it's cryptic on purpose. Like,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? And that's not a slight against
And
Dark
it's
Souls.
not like something like BioShock either. The texts that you're finding, or they would be audio logs in BioShock. They're not just there to tell you what this breed of plant is and tell you why some crazy governor did this thing.
No, it is building very much what is
It's all very
exactly happening in
intentional,
that space.
and it's not much. I wish I would have read it more, but the first probably third of the game, I really didn't like it. I stopped playing actually. And then finally I asked Zach if I could show up late, because it does really pick up after, I think, the first act.
Yeah, like when the Richard stuff starts, I think.
Even a little before that, it gets a little more interesting than the rest of it. Obviously, the opening, we've already said, it's really beautiful. I agree. I loved the opening. But it was not... I was one of those viewers that went into... or playing this game, it was as though I was one of the viewers that went into Crimson Peak thinking it was some really awesome horror movie with a bunch of cool puppets from Guillermo del Toro. No.
Not a gothic romance.
Yeah, it's that. And once I set my expectations, I actually had a very good time. And I'm kind of bummed I didn't read a bunch of the stuff. I could have towards the end, but because I skipped so much in the beginning, I just played the
Yeah,
game.
that's fair.
Just set your expectations. It's very slow. The gameplay is very uninvolved and oftentimes doesn't really relate to anything that you're doing or that the story is sort of trying to go for. So otherwise, I think it's worth your time. As we said, it's very interesting. It's about time to jump into the...
Well, let's do gameplay real quick. Like gameplay, how it plays.
Sure, yeah.
So we've skirted around a little bit. Just, you will find some items. They work as keys. They are not items that affect gameplay. It is literally a razor that can now cut through an object.
Bro.
I know. It's so
That
slow.
razor is rough.
And it's so slow. And it's this little... there's just a little floating... It's the classic, floating use of an item.
Yeah,
too.
like it's in first person, but there are no hands.
Yeah.
But, and actually, the bolt cutters are also pretty bad. But so to get through doors in the spirit world, you have this sort of razor that's made out of... I mean, it looks like a razor for, a barber's razor.
It's made from
the
someone's shame.
Yeah.
From committing suicide. It's crazy.
Oh, interesting. I missed that. But you... it's probably apparent from where you pick it up, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, I just totally missed that. I wasn't looking for it. Anyhow, to get through doors in the spirit world, you have to cut these large blankets of flesh that are blocking hallways, and you just cut straight down the middle. But all of the speed, the speed of cutting it for every door is inconsistent. Intentionally.
Loading something, yeah.
Intentionally. Or even if it's... I don't think it's really loading something.
Oh, really? That's what I assumed it was doing.
I don't think it's loading anything at all. I think it's just intentionally, this is it's a bigger door, or the flesh is thicker in some spots. I don't really think they're going for loading. They could be. I could be very wrong. But you're just supposed to hold down as it slowly...
And it's a long time.
Oh, it's
okay,
so
but real
bad.
quick, let's
So bad, man.
you do have to find the coolest part of the game is Marianne is very much exists in both spaces equally. It's not like she's a medium and can go to the spirit world. She exists fully in both. And so anywhere that she can't go in both, like if one space is blocked off, she can't go at all. Even if like she could technically go there in the physical world, doesn't matter. If the spirit world self can't progress there, she can't either. Right? So there's she exists very much in both spaces, and sometimes you're fully in the physical, sometimes you're fully in spiritual. There are certain mirrors you can use a little bit later in the game where you can actually swap between the two. Mm-hmm. But the best sections in the game, in my opinion, are when it's a full split screen of both. And I think it's because for the player, it manifests exactly what she's feeling. She has her foot in each one, but isn't fully in either. And you cannot, because it's a split screen, fully focus on both. There is no way. Either your attention is fully on one or fully on the other. I found myself sometimes forgetting, oh wait, I should check the physical world.
Often.
Like, and it made me feel like how she feels as a medium. That's the only time the gameplay reflected the narrative in any way. And when it did that, when I realized what it was doing, it really hit home and it really got me. I just really engaged in the game because, you know, you might be looking for the answer to this question. There's a section of the game where you're trying to find a mask. All these spirits in the spirit realm have masks, which seem to represent their self in a lot of ways.
Now, those are the people that have already died.
Yes,
her as a medium is not considered a spirit in the spirit world.
That's fair. Yeah, that's a good a good clarification. So there's a point where you're looking for some people's masks so you can send them on, looking for their mask and your name, and sometimes be like, man, I can't find anything, and I go, oh wait. The physical world, and I go back and I'll
but it's on the screen. Like you shift your entire focus, your like all of your faculties to one side of the screen, just sort of inherently.
It makes you feel like a medium, like how she feels, which is really really good. That section actually we were finding the two masks, and you have to kind of piece together based on the attendance list and stuff. I just it's not even like this thing you have to pick up to show the game that you know it. Once you do it, the game has just registered, oh, she checked the list and she checked the chairs. She knows what happened. And then she'll go back and know the person's name. So she basically just have their name and the mask on them to send them away into the next life, whatever awaits. And she doesn't know. And actually there's a part later where it plays on that fear for her, which is pretty cool. But yeah, it's extremely well presented when it does those sections. I wish there were a few more. But it's I really enjoyed that section. So that's pretty much the gameplay. You're looking through spaces. Really, from a player perspective, what you're getting out of it more is the story of what's going on there.
Definitely.
You're not getting gameplay progression. You're not changing. Occasionally, you'll have to find spirit wells to power up in the spirit world. So you can either launch a spirit blast to charge up a fuse box or create a shield to protect yourself from a space you can't pass through, covered in moths. So it's very simple, lock and key kind of stuff. You know, it's really it.
There's like one point in the game where maybe there's two, where like a Resident Evil style puzzle, you're having to combine items in interesting ways and use them around the world. Look at the item to put in a code that's found on the back of a lockbox or something. You're not doing any of that. You just pick, in fact, I think the most items you have in your inventory at any one time are 4 key items that stay there. The bolt clippers, the cat that lets
it has 20 slots. Isn't it?
Yeah.
It's really weird.
Last week we played Dark. Dark has an entire wheel with 20 slots. You only ever have 1 or 2 items.
Yeah, it's really
At
weird.
any point in the game, you can only have 2 items. It's very odd.
Yeah, very weird.
Just a fully...
Maybe it's for the DLC.
Maybe, but I doubt it. There's so
yeah.
many items, or slots rather. Anyhow, you're not doing anything interesting with any of the items. They are just keys, basically. I think there's one time where you have to combine some pieces of paper to make the music sheet. Oh, and then I guess you've got to not render, but process a photo. What is that called? That whole process.
I forget.
Anyway, you use a dark room to process a photo twice early on in the game. Sure, that's kind of interesting. But otherwise, they are lock and key. It's a very straightforward, narrative-focused game. even the small stuff you can do that might look like it invites some combat oriented gameplay in the spirit world doesn't do that. If you go in, expect a straightforward narrative game, and when I reset my expectations, because I was really turned off, I text Zach. I think I wasn't quite at the end of the opening act yet. Like I really don't care about this game. I don't care about the character. I don't want to play it anymore. But he convinced me to continue playing.
He basically asked you to get to a specific part.
Just a specific part so we could talk about it. But I was like, okay, this is it was pretty all right.
It was pretty all right.
I guess I'll keep going.
So let's jump into spoilers. Here we go. Hard set. Spoilers.
One more thing.
No, whoa.
One more thing. We have to. I think it's only fair that we talk about it when we're talking about gameplay. The biggest detractor from this game. I don't think we'd be doing you a disservice.
It happens twice.
Yeah, go ahead.
No. I just wanted to clarify that.
Okay.
I just want to say it happens twice, and it's a long game. These sections are very short, but that's just a testament to how egregiously bad it is.
Yeah. There are several stealth sections. Some of the most rudimentary stealth you could possibly imagine.
Like, can it see you or not? There is only I have seen you and I have not. There's no in between.
There's the hearing as well. You can hold your breath
and that only matters when it's really close.
Yeah. It barely matters. Like, it's just there, I guess, thematically. But there are two stealth sections and chase sections that are like, the camera is facing you. It's trying to do, Uncharted. It doesn't do it well. It doesn't telegraph anything well. The stealth is just broken and stupid.
Like, so simple, like brain dead. Simple.
It's brain dead, but it just keeps
it's meant to be a
progress.
set piece. Yeah, it's meant to be a set piece, and so like you just have to wait. Something will happen. You move forward. Wait. Something will happen.
Yeah, but it's trial and error. We talked about this with Little Nightmares last week. If it were telegraphed well, and you could sort of try to maneuver your way around, and maybe if you fail,
maybe have some extra mechanics. You could like throw a distraction in the spirit world or something.
Anything would have helped.
Because here's an example. So one mechanic I forgot to mention that I love is you can go out of body. So basically, Marianne stays where she is in the real world, and then can go somewhere she can't progress in the real world through the spirit world. And she has a timer, basically, and she can only go so far until she starts to fade away and you have to snap back. There's a little section later in the game where the monster that is chasing you at the time is looking for you. You didn't like this?
No,
I thought
not
it was
at all.
I thought it was a far better use of the...
Yeah, but there's a very specific reason. Go ahead and finish talking about it.
No, I'm talking about the idea. Like, if more of them were like this and had this idea, it'd be better. Because you're right, the execution is poor.
It's not even the execution that's poor. It's the fact that this is the last thing you do in the game. The last interaction you have in the game before you... I guess there's one more thing after. This is the second to last interaction that you have in the game. And it's another one of these stealth segments. Very short. There's really like two things to hide behind. But you can have one of these out-of-body experiences where you can control only the spirit world, and you can go for a certain amount of time, and then hold down that button to immediately teleport back to where you were. But that's used in the stealth section. You're intentionally supposed to lead the monster away and get captured, and then teleport back, and you can hear the monster screaming like, "Where'd you go? Come back!" The fact that that's the second to last interaction you have in the game, and it's only used once, I think is just bonkers.
Yeah,
it's dumb.
Because it was like,
it's a good idea.
I have to think, and I'm like, oh, that's interesting.
Not a single other time in the game are you asked to think. That's exactly it.
Yeah, and it was really interesting, and I liked it, and it just makes the other ones worse because of it. That's the only time in the game you're asked to think. Yeah, and so the stealth sections are not egregiously bad. They're just bland and take up time that shouldn't be taken.
Yeah, they're like maybe 6 stealth sections.
It's
they're fine.
2 of the 4 chase sequences, because 2 of those chase sequences are literally just run. And it's very obvious where you need to turn and where you need to go.
They're fine.
They're fine. Like, it's just, sure, I get it, whatever. I would take them out if I was making the game, but whatever. But the 2 that are just like, what the heck am I supposed to do? And the worst one. So the first one that happens is terrible. And it took me like 4 or 5 times, I think, to get the trial and error right. And then I finally got it. The second one's worse because it's way shorter and way easier. You have to pull this little thing out to block the monster, which you've never had to do before. It's always been just run until it can't chase you. So the first time that's happened, I immediately tried to go to the door and run out, but she opens it super slowly, like nothing's happening, and tries to leave, and the monster gets you. What's way worse, though, is the fact that if you die there, you have to go all the way back at the beginning of a forced walking section that lasts at least 40 seconds. So if you die from the monster there's a forced walking section that leads up to that moment.
Which means you can't run.
Yeah, and so like you are just walking. It takes 40 full seconds to make that walk. Just about. Instead of putting you right in front of where it's about to happen. Like when you die in the first one, at least it starts you at the beginning of that chase scene.
Yeah.
What?
Yeah, it's very silly.
Why?
I mean, the 40 seconds doesn't seem like a lot, whatever. 40 seconds, it doesn't matter. But it's just a dumb choice. Like, why start in the middle of that walking section? Why put the save point there or the checkpoint instead of at the door into the room that the checkpoint starts? It's really nonsense.
Yeah, this is.
I didn't find that one as bad as the first one.
No, in terms of the trial and error, you're right. It was more the fact that it reset me that far.
I guess I died really once on it because I realized that I was supposed to pull the thing away.
Oh, I did, and I did twice.
And I didn't pull it out fast enough because I was looking, and then it's got the prompt.
Yeah,
on
I
the
was
thing.
an idiot. I didn't.
I realized what it was doing a little too late, and I was like halfway through the animation. So I just did it one more time.
Yeah, but your eyes immediately go toward the gate.
Yeah.
Like it.
I mean, it's even telegraphed. You know, little light up there, flickering or whatever. It's telegraphed. That's where you need to go.
And she cuts the gate and then opens the door, like really slowly.
So if you miss the prompt, which you have to pass on the way to the door, it's telling you need to do that. But if you miss the prompt, which I did initially, I just noticed it sooner than Zach did. Then you're gonna die.
So mad. So yeah,
it's pretty.
This game has some real BS in it.
It does.
Some real, as my boss would say, some proper BS.
Proper BS.
Yeah.
Correct. However, I'm super sensitive to that stuff. I have very little patience anymore for games that just I don't think are designed particularly well and waste your time. However, I decided to give it a little more time, and I do think it's worth it. Once you get past...
I believe, personally for me, this world can bear that weight. And the narrative can bear that weight for me. For some, it can't. It is purely a matter of whether this world and space that they've created can bear that weight or not. That's it. There's no way to justify what they did in those sections. It's, in my opinion, just plainly poor design.
Yeah.
So that's the question. Can this game... and all its problems, can that burden be borne by everything else that they're doing from a narrative and world-building perspective?
And I think this is where we talk about skill up often enough. This is where skill up and I do pretty much agree here. I think it's just barely. For someone, myself, who almost hated the game in the beginning. The first, hour or so, you go through that opening, the intro, where you have to allow your stepfather to pass on, and then when you're introduced to the resort, that was all super intriguing to me. But once you get into some of the gameplay there, I was like, no, this is a really bad game. With that first stealth section, I hated it. I really did. But I don't even think the narrative is like super great. I enjoyed it well enough. And even with that statement, I still think it is good enough to wait, which did you say?
The narrative can bear up the problems.
Yes, correct. So I still believe that. He likes it way more than I do.
I seriously played this game. I never play narrative driven. Like when I want a good narrative, guys, I read a lot. And I read like old school stuff. I like the classics. That's what I like to read. I like stories that have been tried and true by the test of time. I don't play games for narrative. One of my favorite, I'd say tied for my favorite game series of all time, Metal Gear Solid, everybody plays it for the narrative. I don't. I love the narrative. It's great. I play it for the gameplay. Like, I am not a narrative guy. This is just... I played this game in 5-hour spurts, 2 sessions. 5 hours each time-ish. Probably 4. 4 is probably more accurate. 4 hours each time. Just blasted through it. Because I could not put it down. I just was so sucked in. And it's taken me a long time to quantify why. And I finally know. It's the role of what a medium is. That's what intrigued me. And I loved being this bridge, barely able to focus on one world at a time, and putting those pieces together, helping not only people pass on, but the ideas of this space. Because the space has been infected by these people and the problems at the core of it. And just helping this space move on, almost like a spiritual detective. And it's so arbitrary. That's such an ethereal thing. Right? It's not even gameplay or what's happening. It's just the space the game was able to put me into. And for some reason, for the first time, maybe ever, it hooked me. Mm-hmm. And so I think that's what it was for me. So all that to say...
Even more so than what about Observer did you love so much?
For me, the thing I loved about Observer was... it's so hard to find someone who gets... cyberpunk and gets what the purpose of like that game bleeds Brazil. That game bleeds Blade Runner, the dingy I don't know, it's something about the way it presented it that felt fresh and worth being in that I really liked. I definitely didn't enjoy it as much as I enjoyed The Medium, maybe because I am really familiar with those stories already and those places. But we talked about this a little earlier. The idea of is something that's inspired by another work or genre getting it just at the surface level, or is it getting it all the way through? And I think Observer gets cyberpunk and really just science fiction in general all the way through.
The same, you can...
Even horror.
Yeah.
Even horror. Like, it gets it all the way through.
I agree.
We used Lovecraft as an example, right?
I actually want to save that for when we get into the spoilers here.
Okay. We'll push it off, but you get what we're saying.
Similar to what we were saying last week about Paratopic, this understands everything that makes David Lynch. Not something like Control that is surface level, David Lynch, cool, these are quirky, weird, otherworldly things. No, it gets it all the way down to its core. I agree, even though I have not, consumed as much, I guess, cyberpunk content as you have. I agree with all of those things regarding...
You've consumed a lot of horror content, though.
Yes.
And that's saying something when this game even touches you, not from like a scared perspective, but a love of horror perspective, And I would argue that I would not consider this game a horror game, even a little bit.
No.
It's not a horror. It has horror themes, but it's not even like it's trying to use them to be scary. It's not trying to be scary. The most is maybe suspense sometimes, but like it's very much not trying to be scary. Observer is a horror game, a sci-fi horror game, and it checks those boxes really well.
I should have brought it for you, but I want to recommend it to our audience. A movie.
Do it.
I thought that a good movie recommendation would could come from this, and it's a ghost story. This is not really a horror game, and this movie is, the trailer might kind of allude to a little more horror than is actually there, which is none. It's a ghost story called Personal Shopper. It has...
I've needed to watch this.
What is her name? I always forget. From Kirsten
Dunst?
No. She is Belle in
Emma Watson?
In the vampire movies.
Oh, in the band I don't know. Personal Shopper.
Dang it, what is her name? I'm so
sorry. Oh, you're
sorry.
talking about Twilight.
Yeah, Twilight.
I have it pulled up. What's her name? Kristen
Stewart.
Oh, you got it. Yeah,
Kristen
there
Stewart.
It is.
Okay. So, stars Kristen Stewart, who is way better than people give her credit for. Even I give her credit for, because she doesn't often play in things that are meaningful. I'll put it that way. I'll put it bluntly. She doesn't do much that is meaningful. But she is very capable of it. Just like Robert Pattinson, or is it Pattinson?
Pattinson.
I always get that wrong. Just like him.
Well, no, he does those other things way more often, though.
The good things.
Yeah, like The Lighthouse.
Yes.
Guys, The Lighthouse.
That's only been the past 5 or 6 years. What's it been, 12 years now? That's what he was known for. Just like it's taken a long time for Harry Potter. I'm so
Daniel
bad
Radcliffe.
with names. To break out of that. Now he's known for like super weird.
I think one of the best examples is Brad Pitt.
Interesting.
Brad Pitt only did the hunk romance guy thing, and he's eventually just like, no, I want to, like, I'm just gonna do other things. And Seven, Fight Club, like, you know.
I guess I've never seen him in.
See, exactly, like nobody even remembers him for the old stuff now.
And in that exact same vein, our next governor, what the heck is his name? Dallas Buyer Club, Interstellar. Again,
Matthew
I just draw crazy blanks. Yes. That's what he was definitely known for.
Yeah.
And Dallas Buyers Club, he remembers.
Every year I get older, they just stay the same age.
Yeah. He reminisces about Mud and Dallas Buyers Club being some of his favorite works and the things that really showed him to be more. He wishes, it's such a great story. His dad passed before Mud, but he made Mud, and just imagine his dad saying, "Hey, bud, you seen this great movie? It's called Mud. I think you'd like it, and I'd like to share it with you." He like made it for his dad, kind of.
Oh, that's awesome.
It's really good. But yeah, anyway, she is not very well known for, I guess, sort of poignant works. I would put Personal Shopper in that. It's about a medium. She is a medium, and she's trying to help her brother pass on. And a lot of time is spent in his house. His wife is divorced. She's sort of helping her transition and helping him transition. It's really good, really great movie, actually. I like it a lot. It's very somber, very slow, much like The Medium. It's not a horror movie, but it is a ghost story that has some pretty interesting ideas going on. And if you like ghost stories, I think you might like The Medium.
All right.
Not The Medium. Well, yes, The Medium, but Personal Shopper.
So let's move into hard spoilers. Here's finally for real the hard spoiler cutoff. I don't have too much to say post this. I think we've said a lot of what we want to say about the game already. What I do want to say though is there is definitely a hard transition. So a lot of things are thrown at the player. You've kind of learned the rules of this world, how the medium balance works between the spirit world and the real world, and all of a sudden, you come to this environment called the playroom, the day room,
yeah,
a day room, and you come to it and start to piece together that there was that a rape occurred here, and pedophilia specifically, and so it's really somber. But what you notice too is the entire space doesn't have those oranges, right? Those oranges of the spirit world. It's all these green vines. And as you kind of put all the pieces together, you sit in this wheelchair and you have this kind of experience where you are reliving something from Thomas, the guy who called you to come out to Neva. He's the head keeper for this place. And turns out he's a medium as well, reluctantly so. And what's different about him, though, is his spirit side, he calls him his soulmate, his spirit side self is not symmetrical like yours is. Your two sides are the same person. These are two different people inhabiting the same, not even same body or space.
Odd.
Like
no, they're completely
they're just tied together somehow.
Both versions of Marianne, the protagonist, are intrinsically linked. The game doesn't make that much sense if you think about it too long, because in some of the gameplay sections she's blocked, but then when you're only controlling one of them, they're not blocked. But the two versions of Thomas are completely independent, with
their own desires too. Like it's very weird. Yeah, that throws you off.
Different people.
I thought of Troll Hunters. I don't know if you've seen this show. It's a Guillermo del Toro show.
It's a
kids
show?
Yeah, it's a kids show.
No, I'm thinking of that
not the movie.
That documentary.
Ew, that's a good movie though.
I'd love to watch it.
Yeah, it's great. No, Troll Hunters is a TV show which doesn't get enough love, but what it does so well is in a few episodes it sets up all the rules of this space, how the world works, how the fantasy works, and then after 3 or 4 episodes of a status quo, it will throw a wrench into it. Oh, but there's also this other thing. It doesn't contradict what came before, but it's new, and it changes the dynamic of how the characters interact and how the world works, and it does that literally every 3 to 4 episodes. It's so good. You gotta watch Troll Hunters.
Yeah, I know. I
It's
know.
and
I don't watch much
it's not
anymore.
some like award sweeping masterpiece. It's just good writing. It's just really good. Anyway, all that to say, I felt like that moment happened here, where you see this split and you're like, oh, this is bigger than I thought.
You've never been explicitly told any of the rules.
Yeah.
You just made assumptions.
Just like her, she grew up and had to learn on her own, and all of a sudden he figures out that Richard, the character who was kind of the lord of this space, all right, he was the teacher in the day room, has sexually assaulted his oldest daughter. Not Richard's oldest daughter. So Thomas, the character's oldest daughter, was sexually assaulted by Richard, who obviously hates himself, as many people who do these things do. But that's, it's no excuse. That's just like it wouldn't be for us. It's definitely not for Thomas. And so Thomas decides to punish him. And what he does is he lets his spirit side self loose in his mind. So now we got another wrench thrown in. The mind space is part of the spirit space. Very Persona.
Yeah.
Right? They have their own little mind palace. And what happens when... This is such a cool moment for me. Because you go in and a couple things happen. So Thomas's spirit side, I'll just call him Thomas's soulmate. Thomas's soulmate.
They refer to each other as that.
Yeah, Thomas's soulmate enters into Richard's mind to punish him. You learn earlier that Richard was in a comatose state. So basically to rip his mind out. That's what he's doing. He's going there to rip his mind out.
Yeah.
Which is awesome, first of all. But the whole space is covered in the same green vines as the day room. So the force of this guy's sin and like disgustingness was so strong that it literally pervaded the spirit world space in the day room. Like his dominion, the place that he had authority over, basically, was infected by his own spirit, which is just... It brings this incredible perspective to how we see the worlds ourselves. Why do we not like going into places where something horrible has occurred? Or why do we feel off when we're around certain people or in their space when they're just kind of gross people? Like, it gives vision to that. And I think that's really elegant, and because it's never explicitly stated that way.
Gross as in, like, spiritually gross.
Yeah.
If you buy into any of that, the aura people give off.
Yeah.
That's what he's talking about.
Yeah, and like...
Not just like...
But there is
look, an impoverished person.
Yeah.
Let me steer clear.
Yeah. No, it's very much that gut feeling. Nabokov would say you feel it in your spine, right? You feel good literature in your spine. You just feel it. And it's really, really interesting to see that, because the next thing that happens is he starts walking through and the vines actually try to attack him, and his like spirit blast and shields are like way more powerful and effective. There's a space later in the game where he's literally throwing stuff with his like with the
huge
force,
parts of a building,
with the force, basically.
Yeah.
Like he's so much stronger than you, just because he's been doing it longer, probably, right? And he so to have that, you really feel like you're just busting through the doors of this guy's mind. And the way he talks about it, too, is like, oh, come on, stop hiding it from me. And he starts, like, ripping things up, opening things. Like, he's very much just rummaging through someone's brain to find the heart of it, just to rip it out. It's by the roots. It's
really awesome.
It's my favorite part of the whole game, aside from the opening. It just recontextualizes everything, throws a wrench in the rules, and the game then does that wrench later. So you basically find in Richard's space the giant tentacled monster. I was a pentapod monster, for all you Lolita fans, right? And holding it is a little boy who is with a mask on. It is who Richard really is, being held captive by his sins. Literally, he even says it that way, by his sins. And he lets him go, and And he's like, oh, I'm sorry, the monster's holding me captive. I have to run away. Help me. And he just straight up mind blasts him. Like, no remorse. Just obliterates him, making...
Well, he toys with him like a
Oh,
cat
that's
and
true,
mouse a
yeah.
little bit. The boy is led to believe for just a moment this adult is here to help. But then he's like, no.
It's really cruel.
I'm here
like,
for you. It is.
And
that's the intent, because it's not a real child. It is just the repressed memories and shame.
The repressed self, even.
Yeah. Which he is intentionally there to kill.
Which was stilted as a child, which is crazy. Like, the idea that, like, his spiritual self is still a child, that it was stilted there, is really, really interesting. I like that a lot. But it's the puppy.
It is indeed.
But what comes later is there's another person who Thomas invades his mind, and there's a great beast. But this time, the child is, like, fully aware of it. And it comes at the last second, too. The child's like, oh, are you going to help me, sir? You can't beat the
child
beast.
is used as bait.
Yeah, and the child's like, no, I am this monster. I do not care. Like, this is who I want to be.
Yeah.
And this is just, a murdering psychopath, basically. And to have that wrench thrown in, and then Thomas's soul gets stuck in that guy's mind, basically, for the whole game until the very end, when you finally set that guy's mind to pass on. It's very, very, very unique. I liked it a lot.
Yeah. I also enjoy that. It got pretty interesting for me just before that, or it started to pick up, but I stopped the previous session just before I walked into the day room, and then I had one big session, except for like the last hour in the morning, one big session to finish the rest of that, basically the second half of the game. It does pick up. I like it a lot. I am not as hot on this game as you are. A lot of those things weren't as clear to me as they were you.
I read a lot of fantasy, guys.
They come a little more naturally to you, so I appreciate those things. I definitely do.
And you feel them too, like, just because I can put words to it a little easier, like, you can feel those things. Like, yeah, it's clearly enough.
I do want to take a moment to talk about the art direction. We talked about
please. This is a really good take.
Things being used as just a surface level. And I bet this is I've not watched many reviews, just Skill Up's review on this game. And I bet the art direction is a big, not point of contention, but most people are going to talk about this. And that is because it is really the only representation we've seen of, I won't even pretend to know how to say his first name, but Beksinski's work. I'll just call him Beksinski. That's his last name. He, the entire spirit world is 100% straight from his paintings. However, that's not enough. As much as Beksinski would like to say that, what is the quote? Meaning is meaningless to me. To the point where he explicitly did not title any of his work. All of his paintings are untitled. To talk about them, you have to look at them. And the reason for that is he didn't want to sort of lead the viewer down any sort of misconception. Every work is supposed to be interpreted by the person and be personal.
Which is very Thomas Pynchon. If for anyone who's more of a novel person, like Thomas Pynchon, the only thing we have is like 3 pictures of him. There's like nobody even knows really anything about him, and he's in his old works stated that, like, I don't want people to know anything about me. I don't want my life to influence the way they read it. Mm-hmm. It's like I want them to read it for what it is.
However, as much as he might say that, I think that's for a bit of a different reason, a slightly more subtle reason. Not just that this work is supposed to be personal to everybody, but that this work is timeless. He witnessed World War II. He saw the atrocities of the Nazi Party and put that into his work. And all of his, at least the work that the game is specifically focusing on. There were a couple periods before and after the fantastic period, which is what that's all called. That sort of architecture and the really grotesque body horror that is fused with architecture. That's what this game
Stuff he's remembered
is based
for,
on.
right? Basically,
Yes, yeah. The fantastic period is what people call that. It's so much bigger than anything this game has to offer. Not in that this game is bad or insignificant or in any way, but the story is so personal, and in the grand scheme of the world, meaningless. It really is. It doesn't mean anything that this one person had trauma, and I don't want to come across as though I don't care about people's individual feelings, but all of his work in the fantastic period is about government and religion and how those things affect the many and how the many contribute to it and affect it and the cycles of those things. It's huge. It's so much bigger. And that's why, I mean, timeless. Just as some of those things may have applied to the Nazi party and the government that he lived in and how people sort of were brainwashed by that, those could just as easily be applied to, let's say, Amazon or Google today, the world we live in and the governments we are run by, not just what happened to you in your childhood. It is surface level in that it's just interesting visuals. Beautiful, absolutely gorgeously rendered. But like, comparing Paratopic to Control, it is surface level Beksinski. So I actually don't really like it here. And one of the reasons, other than that it's pretty... uniform all the way through. The major reason that I prefer the physical world to the spiritual world, because the use of it doesn't really get it, I think.
And even if, and it's beyond that, because you could even say, like, Beksinski's work is fantastic period is uniform in its color palette, but
it uses like 3 or 4 colors,
but it's not uniform in every other way. Like, there's so much there, and it's so rich, and everything gives something new. And the uniformity here is just, okay, let's reuse these assets, let's make good use of these things, which is not bad. I think, efficient game design is good. I just think that it's not special. Like, when you look at 2 Beksinski paintings that are using the same color palette, you're like, wow!
I mean, there's brown. Almost all of the fantastic period incorporates brown or the grayscale to some way, mostly brown, and then splashing some of those other things in really breathes a lot of horrific life into
brown, which a lot of people will, turn their nose at, beautiful. Like, it makes brown beautiful. Like,
absolutely.
His work, it's incredible. So, yeah, I agree. I couldn't agree more. You said it way more elegantly than I ever could. But yeah, it's that's the way I think that I felt that way without knowing all that. Like, I felt like it was like, oh, that's cool. Looks cool. Like, that's about it.
Just look at more of his work, man.
Yeah.
It's really incredible. And it's blatant what it is portraying. You don't have to know anything about him. You don't have to know that he grew up during World War II. It's very apparent. And that's why I say it's timeless. 100 years from now, anyone's going to be able to apply that to their government. Anyone in the fictional 1982 can look at Beksinski and it would be relevant.
Yeah.
So the medium doesn't really use it to great effect. It's great to look at, but that's about it.
Yep.
What else you got to say, man?
That's it. I mean, I won't even bring up the very ending of the game. I think it does end on a cliffhanger that I think isn't earned. I think I would have liked to see them fully resolve this story. It resolves it thematically, I'd argue, which is good. And it kind of wraps up all the stuff it's talking about and its world really well. But there are basically 2 cliffhangers it ends on, and
Are there multiple endings?
No. There's the ending, and then there's a little post-credit sequence.
Oh, see, I thought maybe there would be, but I had something to do, so I went to the PlayStation menu. But when I came back, it knocked me out of the credits straight to the main menu.
Yeah. It's basically Thomas has found a way to get his physical body into the spirit world.
Oh,
and
interesting.
and so he's walking away from the spirit world version of Neva. in his physical body. So it's just two things that are kind of like. So the main ending, I just think it would have been better to resolve it here because of the kind of story it is. And as for the Thomas one, like, I don't mind as long as they drop some DLC, you know, like, to let me play some again, but they won't.
Because I didn't see that, you had just told me about the cliffhanger ending. I actually didn't interpret the first ending as a cliffhanger. From a plot perspective,
from a plot perspective, it's a cliffhanger, but like I said, it thematically resolves everything.
Yeah, but not a cliffhanger in that, oh my god, there's going to be a sequel. It's left completely like the top.
Yeah, I didn't mean that. I guess I didn't mean it like that.
It's completely up to your interpretation. It's not just like, wow, I can't wait for the next book. It's completely interpretive.
I guess when I say cliffhanger, I just mean like there is no plot resolution. It cuts before
what would you call that? Because I think colloquially, when you say cliffhanger, it means wow, like the second.
What's going to happen next?
The second ending would be more of a cliffhanger, like, wow, how did he gain that power? We must learn how how it works. But like the spinning top, which is really the only example I can come up with right now. In Inception, everyone has talked about that to death. We are not going to mention it any more than that. But plenty of interpretations came from that ending. What would you call that kind of ending if not a cliffhanger?
I don't know. I don't have a word for it. I'm sure there's a word for it in the literary space or something. But yeah, just ambiguous ending.
Sure. Yeah, it's that. It's an ambiguous ending.
That's what I meant when I say cliffhanger. You know, it's not. It doesn't resolve the plot, but it resolves the ideas.
Yeah.
So anyway, all that to say, I think it's a good game. I would recommend it to definitely not everyone, but there are a handful of people who I would say would enjoy this game, and I'm glad I played it. But because of some of the sections in it, I doubt I'll play it again anytime soon.
That's definitely the case for me. I don't know if I'll ever play it again. I would like to actually play the opening again now that I have a better appreciation for the game as a whole, because that opening is great.
It's incredible.
And again, just the way the world is presented, the physical world, it's just so good, man.
And the split screen stuff. Yeah, there's a lot to love here. But that's my take. Anything else, man?
No. I think that just about wraps up The Medium, our second game in our annually horror series. Join us next week for a couple other games. We mentioned last week there's really no theme to a lot of the overarching month as there was last year. But the pairing next week is very intentional. We're going to be diving into some things that took the, I guess, legacy of PT and ran with it in two different directions and see how that plays out. And we're going to, lament the cancellation of Addison Road again.
And Silent Hills.
Yeah, I mean, PT as a whole.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, join us next week for some PT-esque horror games. And we want to remind you that our Discord is now open. Come join us. You can find the link down in the description or on either of our social media channels. Come talk about your favorite horror games. Talk about why this game sucks or why it's really good. If you have looked into Beksinski's work at all, Oktoberfest finally getting to me. Tell us what you love, or if it just really disturbs you and turns you off, that would make sense as well. His work is not for the faint of heart.
In fact, that might make me more confident in your in your general personness.
But just come join us, share games, join the budding community, and don't forget to share what you love with who you love.